Hello everyone, Cyberphile back again with another Retroid Pocket 2 tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at playing your favorite old school first-person shooters on the Retroid Pocket 2. Before we get started, I did want to note that while some of these did actually get proper Android ports, many have been either removed from the Play Store or aren't compatible with older versions of Android. Personally, I'm running Android 6, but regardless of the version you're running on your RP2, these steps should get at least the following games running pretty well on your device. Now, without further ado, let's start with the granddaddy of first-person shooters, Wolfenstein 3D. For a couple of these, including Wolfenstein, we're going to need a DOS emulator. While RetroArch does have a working DOS core, I had a lot more success in getting games to run well through Magic DOSBox, a free app available on the Play Store. The free version only allows you to add one title to your library, meaning you'll have to reconfigure every new title you play. So if that rustles your jimmies, you can shell out the $350 for the full version, which I've personally been enjoying. If you vaguely know how annoying it is to wrestle with DOSBox, mounting images and adjusting your directories, you'll be pleasantly surprised to learn that Magic DOSBox deals with all of that for you, which is very useful, as the Android keyboard leaves quite a bit to be desired on the RP2. So let's boot this up and see how it works. After the splash screen, you'll see a blank black screen. To add a new game, you'll need to hit the plus button on the left side of the screen. Using touch mode as if you're scrolling, enter the name of the game you're adding, then have Drive C point to your DOS ROMs folder. In general, you shouldn't need to mess with any of these settings, but I always crank up my memory to the max 64 bits, and sometimes these old DOS games will actually have docs that'll let you know what you should change in these settings, if you need to. You probably won't need to mess with sound at all, especially because we'll be fiddling with that in each game's individual setup, but in general, if your game isn't getting any sound at all, try switching PC speaker on, or finding and adding your own sound fonts. But in general, you probably won't have to worry about this too much. Some DOS games you'll need to set up a CD-ROM, but for Wolfenstein you'll probably only need to install it. Do this by selecting install.bat as your main program and running it. Just press the green checkmark, then the new icon that was added. As a quick aside, your folders can't have more than 8 characters, or you'll need to do some configuration screwery, so just keep it simple. If you already have the game in setup files, just hang tight, we'll get there soon. Whenever you load up a program, you'll need a keyboard. Press B while in touch mode and click on the little keyboard icon in the bottom of the screen. The one with the little Android logo gives you the keyboard you're probably used to seeing on your RP2, while the one on the right gives you a more full keyboard, including arrow and function keys. Get your game installed, and when you're done, hit quit from the menu we used to bring up the keyboard. Back in Magic DOSBox's main menu, go into touch mode and hold A on a game to edit it. Scroll down and change the main program to the actual exe file, in this case wolf3d.exe, and run it. Boom! You're playing Wolfenstein. But unless you want to finagle with using a touch keyboard to play the game, and you don't, you're going to need to map controls. This... well, it's a pain to be completely honest with you. It's not hard, it's just tedious. Once you're in-game, press B while in touch mode to bring up Magic DOSBox's menu. First, go to Adjust Screen and fill the screen, unless you like that stupid black bar for some reason. Now scroll down to Gamepad and Tilt. Click the Enabled checkbox and let's get mapping. Set the right joystick to mouse and the left joystick to keypad. Map your left joystick buttons to the 4 cardinal directions. If you want your controls to be more modern, hit the little gear icon next to your left and right arrows and select the Alt modifier, so you'll strafe with right and left instead of turn. Unfortunately, because of the way Wolfenstein's controls work, you can't strafe and turn at the same time, making for a somewhat clunky, albeit authentic experience. If you really want to play Wolfenstein and want it to feel good, just play the GC's Doom Total Conversion on your PC. Anyway, back to mapping. The painful process of mapping the buttons involves selecting gamepad buttons, pressing plus to add a new mapping, turning off touch mode, pressing that button, turning touch mode back on, hitting the green check mark, then selecting what you want to map it to, then rinse and repeat for every single button. Many DOS games run pretty well through Magic DOSBox, but the problem you'll often run into is not having enough buttons for all the keys. This becomes most obvious in games like Strife, which is incredible and you should totally play by the way, where there is no key mapped to previous or next weapon. All weapons are mapped to the number keys. In Wolfenstein, this is easily remedied since there are only 4 weapons, easily mapped to the D-pad. Though, if you do this, you'll have to map them through the gamepad buttons, or they'll just default to the arrow keys, even if you change them in this specific D-pad mapping. There is a way to fix the number key weapon cycle thing though, so you can cycle through your weapons with a shoulder button as you would expect. You can achieve this by setting up a looper. Basically, a looper cycles through the desired keys each time you press that button. To create a looper, go into the menu and scroll down. Here, create a new weapon cycle looper, and add enough number keys to cycle through all your weapons. Now, map your L1 and R1 buttons to that looper, and change the direction of one with the little gear icon. The only downside of this is if you haven't gotten the weapon, the looper will still cycle through the number keys, so you'll have to keep something of a mental note, or just add the numbers to your looper as you acquire more weapons. This is about as good as we're going to get. Definitely playable though. Keep in mind that there are usually like 3 different ways to control mouse sensitivity. Some games will have them in both the game and setup files. There's both the mouse option in Magic DOSBox and an individual option when you map something to the mouse. So if aiming feels off, just futz with one or more of these sensitivity settings. Most DOS games, such as Duke Nukem 3D, have a setup file packed in once you install it. If you have the Atomic Edition CD, make sure you have the CD-ROM enabled and pointing to the disk image. If you need to install, change setup to point to setup.exe, then select the setup button in the bottom left. You might need to set up your sound and music in addition to other optional settings. If it's already set up and working well, just ignore this next part. Using the on-screen keyboard, navigate to Sound Setup and set both to Sound Blaster. For the sound setup, use the default settings, then set number of voices to 8, 16-bit mixing, stereo sound, 22 kHz mixing rate. Under Controller Setup, select Keyboard and Mouse, then select Advanced Control Setup, Advanced Mouse Setup, and set the mouse Y-axis scale to -1. Otherwise, you'll find your Y-axis to be inverted when you map your right stick to aiming, unless of course you're into that. Go ahead and launch your game, map your controls, and kick some ass. Final note on DOS. Frame skip is set to 2 by default in Magic DOSBox. These games should run mostly well enough on your RP2 to not warrant using frame skip, so feel free to set that to 0 or 1 if your games look, and by extension play, not so smooth. Okay, you should be pretty good with setting up any other DOS games you want to play now. Let's tackle Doom. While you certainly could set up the DOS version of Doom, I'm here to tell you that the PrBoom core for RetroArch runs it much, much better. If you don't know how to work RetroArch, check out my beginner's guide video, but otherwise, all you really need to do is download the PrBoom core, then load the associated Doom mod. In the quick menu, change your Control Port 1 controls to Gamepad Modern, and you're basically set to blast demons. Seriously, that's it. Enjoy. Half-Life has an amazing Android port that not only runs incredibly smooth on the RP2, but also only requires very minor setup. All you need to do is download the free app Xash3D FWGS. Is it Sash 3D? FWGS? Anyway, download the app from the Google Play Store, slap your Valve folder from your Half-Life file somewhere on your device, then navigate to it by selecting Select Game Data Location. Launch and you're playing Half-Life. Use Touch Mode to navigate the menu and head to Configuration. Go to Touch, Touch Options, and ensure Enable Touch is turned off. Next, go to Controls and set up your controls how you like them. As you map stuff, you may notice that the B button won't map without kicking you out of the configuration menu. Map everything else, exit the game, then navigate to the Valve folder you put in your device and look for keyboard.cfg. Edit this file and see how your other buttons are mapped and map B button as you wish. Easy. If you need to access the menu in-game, just change to touch mode, then press B. Hopefully this helped you set up your favorite old school first-person shooters. If you need some more Retroid Pocket tutorials, check out my beginner's guide and Pegasus tutorial. Now go! Enjoy your time killing Nazis, demons, aliens, robots, and everything in between. I'd like to take a moment to thank Harvest Time and Pocket Tim, my 2 Patreon supporters. By supporting me on Patreon, you really motivate me to keep putting out the best content I can possibly make. Link to my Patreon is in the description, and you too could hear me talk about how cool you are, and possibly score some exclusive Cyberphile merchandise. Hey, thanks for watching! Don't forget to subscribe for more Cyberphile content, and if you like this video, show me with that little thumbs up button. If you liked this video, you might like one of my other videos. You can click right on the boxes to jump to them. Cyberphile, offline.